Hello, Make Idaho Better fans. It's time for your next analysis video. This last survey was about gifts and gifting culture. So let's kick this thing off. All right, first things first, I always explain at the beginning of any analysis video, what is Make Idaho Better? Basically, it's an online research platform that helps give people the opportunity to say what they think and feel and experience about important state and local issues. So it's the easiest way if you want to weigh in and contribute on things that matter to be a part of that discussion. You don't have to go anywhere, show up at a specific time, get a babysitter, take time off, have a long lunch, none of that stuff. If you've got 5 minutes every week or so, that's about how often we send out surveys. You can participate. It doesn't take long at all, but we're collecting data for sometimes the first time about a bunch of these issues, and it's really helpful to people that can do something about it. So if this sounds good to you, click the Do Your Part button, join our email list, and then that's how you'll get sent the surveys, and weigh in, and then we'll send you an email with our analysis and the results. So this week's analysis is about the gifts survey. And I called it the Gifts and Gifting Culture Survey. And this is linked to in the analysis, as we always do. So you can see what all the questions are. You can see the overall results. And that looks like this. This is a dashboard showing kind of how everything broke down overall. And then the analysis is where we kind of dive into those questions like beneath the surface. I do kind of expert analysis and segmentation to show what's going on underneath the surface. So if you're the kind of person that wants me to get right to the punchline, what stood out from this whole survey, I'll do that with this Cam's main takeaways. So I'm Cam, by the way. So one thing that stood out is that there was like tons of agreement on a question we asked below about kind of, is the culture of holiday spending that we have too much? And yeah, everybody pretty much agreed about that, which was more than I expected. People feel most pressure to give gifts to their immediate family and to their partners. But people give often to people in need, more than I expected. So those were some main takeaways. We've got a table of contents here, cover a lot of ground, so I wanted to give you an idea of what's coming next. And as I mentioned, the analysis post is all about going deeper than those overall results that are always public, and showing kind of where agreement is, where disagreement is, how different groups of people answer things. We always start with the demographics. This is really always good context to keep in your mind when you're looking at survey results, to get a sense of who are the kinds of people that answered this survey, and that can really help you get a sense of, is there maybe a bias or a skew in here? Now, there's always bias in every survey. There's more bias typically in a survey like this. It's an opt-in survey, which means people can decide whether they want to take it or not. We're not phone calling or going door to door to kind of hear from a really, really broad cross-section of people. These are the people that saw this in their email inbox or on Facebook and decided to participate. So these are typically people that are more interested in the subject or just pretty engaged people, more than what we call like an average Idahoan. So we have to keep that in mind. These gray bars indicate these are actually questions that I didn't ask in this survey, but I was able to pull those demographics in from previous surveys if I had survey history from some of these respondents. So about half of the people that took the survey, I didn't have survey history for these questions. That's why they're gray. The blue ones are the people that I do know kind of where they fell, how they answered these things. So of the people that we know their gender, we heard from more women than men. The people that we know their age, we heard from younger people more than older people. County, this was something from this survey, so there isn't any unknown respondents, but most are from Ada County, with a bunch of other counties participating, but kind of in smaller amounts. And then I wanted to highlight like how big are the families here. That's kind of relevant to like gift giving and how much you spend. And of the people we know how many kids they have, most are none, with some are, have kids. Big group that we don't know. So anyway, let's get to it. So in these analysis posts, I've had a small screen this whole time. Make that bigger. That's a little better. All right. So this is the overall result that you'll see in here. So I'll highlight kind of what we know from the overall and then show you something that's kind of below the surface that you didn't know. So, oops, here we go. So I want to start by asking how much happiness do gifts bring you? Both receiving a gift or giving a gift. And overall, people reported more happiness. This is a weighted average scale, so the bigger the bar shows more happiness than the shorter bar. So people said they got more happiness from giving a gift than receiving a gift in general. And then I was able to kind of take that data and then make some calculations to see for each person kind of which one they preferred and how many people fell into that. So here I was able to show that like 70% said giving was more, like when comparing the same person, how they answered both of those. About 25-30% said it's about the same, the level of happiness for both of them. And then there were two people, which I thought was funny, that so they're saying, I get more happiness from getting stuff than giving stuff, which I was like, way to be honest, respect. Okay. And then I was also kind of curious, like how much, so if all 70% of these people are happier from giving gifts, how much more happy from giving gifts than receiving gifts? And it was about half said like a little bit more happiness compared to like more or a lot more. That was just how I could compare like the choices they made. And then of those two people that prefer receiving gifts, so one was a little bit more and the other one was more. Okay. What about the types of gifts that are preferred? So I asked this, like, what are the types, as in like something physical, like clothes, an experience, like travel, something symbolic. I think that was like art, quality time, service, etc. So I asked both of these, what do you prefer to receive and what do you prefer to give? Because I was curious if there's a difference in the way and the preferences people have with that. And yeah, what was interesting to me was that people prefer to receive an experience, but they prefer to give overall something physical, like something you can wrap up and unwrap. I thought that was interesting. So then I wanted to kind of overlap those questions to see, do people typically like to give and receive the same types of things, or are most people wanting to give and receive different things? So this is on the top here is like what you prefer to receive, and down here is what you prefer to give. So the biggest bar is showing that if you prefer to receive something physical, that's also what you prefer to give, probably. That's 80% of the people that prefer to receive something physical said that. But besides that, it's not actually the same. If you prefer to receive an experience, that's the most common answer of what you prefer to give, but it's only 30% of that group. So 70% of that group said, I prefer to give something different than what I like to receive, which I thought was interesting. With something symbolic, the biggest group said, I prefer to receive or to give something symbolic too. Quality time was close. Service was, well, this one's smaller. So that's kind of interesting. My takeaway on that is that people know what they like, but they might think that they're kind of weirdos maybe, and that other people won't like the kinds of things that they like as much. So maybe they're trying to be more thoughtful, like, I know what I would want, but most people wouldn't want that, so I'll get them what I think they want. But that's kind of interesting to me. Next, I wanted to think about spending. How much do people spend? And what surprised me a lot was how many people said they spend over $1,000 during like gifts during the holidays. Um, that seems like a lot of money to me. Um, Most people were kind of in this $100 to $500 range, though. So, yeah. But then I kind of wanted to see if, we know about happiness from gifts, and we know about spending. Kind of, do you typically spend more on gifts if they bring you more happiness? So what we've got here are the spending groups, and I kind of consolidated some of them so it's easier to kind of visualize. So less than $100, 100 to 500, 500 to 1,000, and greater than 1,000. And the proportion that say a great deal of happiness from either giving or receiving, that proportion in these like higher spending categories is higher than it is for these lower spending categories. So there might be something to that. Like if gift giving is something that really makes you feel good, maybe you're more likely to kind of prioritize it in the budget and have a bigger to spend more. So I think that could be true. Next, I was interested in, we've talked about what kind of gifts you prefer to give. So that's what I'm looking here. So like, are there any patterns with like if you spend a lot, do you prefer to give these types of gifts? If you spend a little, do you prefer to give these types of gifts? And the thing that stands out most to me is an experience. So experience was high in this 500 to 1,000, and also in this greater than 1,000, but experience is lower in the other two. That's the main takeaway for me from this. And I think that makes sense because I think experiences are typically more expensive. Like getting a stocking stuffer for somebody for 10, 20 bucks, probably a lot cheaper than, like paying for a massage or I don't know, a vacation or a meal or something, like a nice dinner. So maybe that's something that if you spend more, that's more in the price range, that's something you can afford more than if you have a smaller budget. One way of thinking about that. Okay, and then I wanted to know, like, okay, got a sense of how much you spend. Like, how comfortable are you with that amount of spending? And the biggest group here was somewhat comfortable. So I'll paraphrase that as like, it's a little bit more than I want to spend, but it's not a big deal. It's okay. Versus very comfortable or extremely comfortable is like, yeah, not worried at all. This is totally fine. I'm not stressed out. Versus on this other end is like, I can't really afford this, or I'm really stretching it right now. So I was curious to break that down again by spending level. So I was like, are the people that are spending a lot less comfortable with it? Not really. So, the very comfortable or extremely comfortable group, if you put those together, that's like over 50%. What did I say about this? Yeah, actually, there's not that much difference, I don't think. I think maybe if anything, like this upper group is maybe more comfortable, but and then the least comfortable would be in the smallest spending group. So I didn't find anything here that I was like, this really stands out, but I wanted to show it because I checked it. So then I wanted to look at, then again, happiness. Are you more comfortable with how much you're spending if it brings you a lot of happiness? And I think sort of. Um, you're not really comfortable with spending very much if you only get a little bit of happiness from gift giving. You know, that you're probably not so comfortable or somewhat comfortable. And then, if we add up these two red bars to show like people that aren't comfortable, that looks about the same for a moderate amount of happiness and a lot of happiness. To get to a great deal of happiness, doesn't seem to be that many people that are not so comfortable. So, and then these two bars together look pretty high. So I'm not sure. Jury's out on that one. So then so we know how much you spend, know how comfortable you feel about that. And then I wanted to ask, like, do you expect this year's spending will compare to last year's spending? And most people are saying about the same. Though if you compare these two answers to these two answers, who's going to spend less compared to who's going to spend more, about twice as many people saying they're going to spend less. I don't know if that's because, some people are feeling more economic hardship now than they did last year. There's certainly some maybe like scary headlines in the papers about the economy, and the stock market's been kind of wobbling, but yeah, most people are saying about the same. So yeah, I wanted to know, like, based on how much you typically spend, are you expecting to spend more or less? And it looks to me like this is about the same across the board. So I think what this means is like everybody's kind of has their budget for gifts, and then they've got they've got their routines and maybe comfortability, and it's not like the people that are spending over $1,000 are necessarily feeling stressed out about that and like kind of backing off, not per se. Like, this is maybe everybody's, I don't know if this is true, but maybe everybody's like spending like a similar proportion to their income, and so they're not necessarily reeling it back. I don't know, thinking out loud on that one. So who gets gifts? So I asked two questions here. One was, do you have these types of relationships in your life? A partner, immediate family, extended family, yada, yada, yada. So then I could use that when I asked, like, do you give them gifts, either like a big gift, a small gift, or no gift? I can kind of, I know whether or not they have these relationships in their life, so that I can tell the difference between I don't give them gifts because I don't have them in my life versus I choose not to give them gifts. So we're able to break that down in this view, kind of taking out where it doesn't apply. You can see of all the respondents, these dark greenish saying I give them big gifts, and the light green is saying I give them small gifts, and yellow is no gifts. So for partner and immediate family, it's about like 90%. Most of this whole column is, so about 90+% of people are saying they give their partner or their immediate family a gift. About half of them are saying I give them a big gift. And then you can compare these other relationship groups. The next biggest one is giving to people in need. Looks like roughly 80 to 90% are giving to people in need, and I don't know what that is, almost 15-20% are giving a big gift. Looks like the smallest groups are neighbors and like other friends, not your best friends, giving them a gift. And then about half of people reported giving a small gift to coworkers. that was kind of interesting. And then I wanted to see if that changes by how much you spend. So we've got those groups again, less than 100 compared to, greater than 1,000, and then in between here. And you can see, seems like the less than 100 group is still giving their partner and families, for the most part, a gift, but not big gifts. In fact, they give big gifts to the needy at least as much as they do to their partners and immediate family. But then once you get up past that into all these other brackets, it almost looks the same to me. If you spend a lot, then you probably give bigger gifts. But once you cross that threshold, you're typically like giving, bigger gifts to your partner and immediate family. I was impressed by how much across all of these spending totals are giving to people in need. That's really cool. I didn't expect that. Also, people that don't spend a lot on gifts during the holidays are never giving to coworkers, at least in this group. But if you spend more than that, it looks like about half to 2/3 report giving kind of small gifts to coworkers. Interesting stuff to me. Okay, now is like the kind of stressful part of gift giving. Like, do you feel pressure? And how much pressure? So, pressure to give gifts, I mean. So here it's showing people feel the most pressure to give gifts to their immediate family and next to their partner, and then people in need. But immediate family is the biggest. And if we look at it kind of the same way we did just a second ago, you can see, over half of people saying they yes or sort of feel pressure to give gifts to their partner. Immediate family is definitely the biggest. So roughly half saying yes, I feel pressure. If you include the sort ofs, that's about 70% indicating they feel pressure. Doesn't look like people feel much pressure generally to give stuff to their neighbors. So that's kind of interesting. And then they feel kind of pressure to give to needy, whether that's, somebody asking, maybe that's the, what are they? The Santas in the grocery store parking lots ringing the bells, or, the emails asking for end of year donations or something like that. Then let's look at it again. Like, who feels pressure based on kind of how much you spend? Looks like this group that doesn't spend a lot, they don't have any red, and the only red they have in categories are partner, immediate family, and best friends. They don't feel any pressure to give gifts to coworkers or neighbors, sort of to needy, a little bit to extended family, but there's not that much pressure in this group for those kinds of relationships. But as you get into these other ones, there's at least somebody feeling pressure for almost all of these relationships. Though neighbors, nobody feels, yes, I feel pressure, but there's some sort of feel pressure, whether that's, I don't know, baking cookies or something, I'm not sure. And yeah, so it's kind of interesting to me that people that spend 100 to 500 feel relatively the same amount of pressure as people that spend over 1,000. I would have expected if you spend over 1,000, maybe you feel more pressure than if you spend less, because maybe you're better off. Therefore, like, you could give more. Maybe some people expect it. I don't know, but it doesn't seem that way. It's like once you kind of spend over this amount, the experience looks pretty universal. All right, now let's round this out with the big picture question. Do you feel that our culture of holiday spending is too much? Whoa, okay. There looks like some agreement here. 55% said yes, absolutely. You add the yeses to that, you get about 80% saying, mm-hmm. You only got 5% that said no. seems like a lot of consensus. Now let's break that down by spending level. You know, and it looks like the more you spend, the less likely you are to have the strong stance of yes, absolutely, the culture is too much. But still, it's the most popular choice across the board. If you don't spend very much, you have the highest amount of, you know, saying yes, absolutely, it's too much. But maybe up here, it's more of like I've got the resources, it's too much, but it is what it is, and it's not really that burdensome to me, so whatever. Versus if potentially if you have less income, this is really bothersome to you, and you can't just kind of absorb the costs as well. And then let's look at happiness again. Like if you feel like it brings you a lot of happiness, do you feel like it's out of control or it's too much still? And it looks like maybe there's a slight downward trend here. So if it only brings you a little bit of happiness, you're the most likely to say, yes, it's absolutely too much. But and then it looks like it kind of goes down and then you get into the a lot and a great deal kind of levels of happiness. You might be less likely to say, yes, absolutely, it's too much, but still it's a big group. So I think everybody kind of thinks it's too much. Or most. So that's all for charts. I do want to bring everybody's attention to the comments. The comments are maybe the best thing about these surveys. The charts are really cool and really helpful, but these comments are so insightful. Like there's always points of view that I never thought of, and I learn a ton. So I've tried to make it easy for you to check these out. So I've listed the ones that I thought were the most insightful or most representative of other points of view in the comments. And I've highlighted kind of key phrases to help you skim like things that you're interested in to read. But people are really thoughtful. People spend a lot of people spend a lot of time on these comments. There's even some, look, we got like somebody wrote a page. Actually, this comment's really, really good. I've highlighted like, several things in it so you can figure out what you want to read if you'd like to. But this is really good stuff. And then we always have a GIF at the end. Cute dog unwrapping presents. Very cute. And with that, I will say thank you to everyone who participated in this research. Knowing what each other think kind of goes a long way to making people better informed, more understanding, and more solution-oriented, I believe. And they can kind of think more deeply about the positions that they have. And I think if more people do that, the better off we'll be. And the better results we'll get, the more people that participate. And the more variety, the better. So I want everybody's view represented. Anyway, thanks a lot. Stay tuned for our next survey.